We are ready for round 9, and we've got a doozy for you. A couple of 8-0 players, some pretty big names. Let's head down to the floor, and we'll tell you who they are. Hello and welcome to round 9 coverage of Grand Prix Legacy. I'm Brian David Marshall. I'm joined in the booth by Eduardo Sajulik. And Eduardo, we've got a great matchup here. We've got Owen Turtenwald playing Stoneblade. He's up against Sam Pardee playing Grixis Delver. These are two players at the top of their game on the Pro Tour scene. And, well, you know what? They're carried it over to this Grand Prix. They're both 8-0 at the end of day 1.
Yeah, and already you can, and both players as well doing it with decks that are a little different from the norm. Owen choosing to play Stoneblade, a deck that had a lot of success in the past using Stoneforge Mystic and True Name Nemesis, trying to get equipment on a creature that really you can't do anything about and trying to push the advantage that way, as well as basic lands, which allows you to fight these wasteland decks necessary when you're playing a card like Jace the Mind Sculptor. However, on Sam Pardee's side, he went for a pure metagame call. It looks like Grixis Delver, but there's free True Name Nemesis, 2 Bitter Blossom. He was ready for Underground Sea decks.
Wow, look at Owen Turtenwald. Island, and playing
wow.
Delver Secret. Sam Pardee, only a wasteland, and not even any targets for it, and nothing to do with it, and no second land to accompany it. Here's Owen Turtenwald. He's going to fetch. We just see him fetch that beautiful basic plains here. We will.
Yeah, and I mean, Sam is in incredible trouble. I would assume there was a mulligan, deciding whether to a risk assessment on deciding is this worth it or not, and then not hitting the land is, I mean, it's always brutal. Owen's super far ahead here.
And then, is this going to be a True Name Nemesis? It is.
It's worth knowing if you're not familiar with Stoneblade. Okay, well, we're done. I mean, Owen just played Freds against an opponent that couldn't do anything, so that was easy. But if you're wondering what Owen was doing in the deck, it's very similar to the other Delver aggro tempo decks. There's still Daze. There's still Force of Will. He also plays 4 Spell Pierce. I know that Owen is a big fan of the card and believes that people should just play 4 copies of it. It's just very good against too many situations in Legacy, and it allows you to also win kind of Jace wars. Make sure that you can prevent that Jace from coming into play as you play 4 Wasteland, you play 4 Daze, 4 Spell Pierce. It's, you know, that package of disruption that's cheap and efficient.
Well, the thing about Spell Pierce is your opponents also play Wasteland, and they often don't have a ton of room to navigate with their mana.
Right. Now, Spell Pierce against a deck like Grixis Delver, more often than not, though, what you're aiming, you're probably happy to trade it with kind of anything. Disrupting a Ponder, disrupting a Brainstorm, both those are actually fine, because you can't really disrupt one of the threats. So you want to disrupt either one of their key spells, but there's not a ton of them. So it comes down to just disrupting their game plan as much as you can, usually. But now we're going to the post-board game. Coming from Owen, back to basics. Very key.
Oh, yeah. We saw those beautiful basics, and, you know, we want to go back to them, and you really can punish some decks just utterly. We saw him playing against lands yesterday, and, you know, Sam Black just had to, like, play his out 3 turns to maybe get a chance to Crozen Grip, and he didn't have the time.
Right, because he was Sam Black was facing 9 power in play. But yeah, back to basics. If you might have played Legacy, but back to basics has seen a lot more sideboard space in Legacy recently. It was seen as tech from Miracles, and it's moved on to more decks. And we even saw Yuya Watanabe decide to run the powerful spell and run more basics in order to run it. And it's very similar to that class of card like Choke, where it's the kind of the Blue Blood Moon, in the sense, basically non-basic lands can't untap, and it really punishes these Grixis Delver mana base as well. They don't play a basic land, so you're kind of stuck. Other cards that might come in, Owen will probably board in Council's Judgment, since Sam plays free True Name Nemesis. We're probably going to see Flusterstorm, since...
And because Council's Judgment doesn't target, you can deal with True Name Nemesis with it.
Right. You both vote, but your vote says True Name Nemesis should go. Yeah. So next, Flusterstorm probably coming in for a Spell Pierce. Not a big fundamental change, just a slight optimization. Path to Exile, well, it's very close to Swords to Plowshares. Actually, it's better in this matchup. Again, no basic lands. The Vendilion Clique may come in, but it's unlikely in a matchup like this. I think Owen's plan remains similar to the pre-board plan. It's just jam, a Stoneforge Mystic, a True Name Nemesis, and ride that to victory. Sam Pardee's side, we're going to see Diabolic Edict is going to have to come in. Otherwise, you just lose to the card True Name Nemesis. Dread of Night, probably not really anything that it does. And yeah, I'm looking at Sam Pardee's sideboard. There's actually not that much. The 2 Power Blasts will come in for sure. The Snapcaster Mage with it being a nice addition, but
I just assume the Liliana, the Last Hope, comes in because everyone just brings them in, and they've been good every time we've seen them.
I was going to, leave the Liliana Last Hope for last because, well, okay, not literally as a pun here, but the fact is, Liliana is what allows you to grind card advantage, and it's not that easy to deal with. So even though it's a little weaker against Stoneblade, it's still a card advantage Planeswalker that's difficult to deal with, so we're going to probably see Sam favor it here.
Although, as you said, a little weaker to True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, and you can see that Sam is mulliganing to 6. I mean, you're 8-0, so it's not so bad. Probably not how you want to start your day, though.
Some would say you might be due.
Law of averages be. Probabilities may be one of the most misunderstood subjects of all time.
Yes, it was just explained to us before we came on camera that Neil Rigby said everything is a 50-50 proposition.
It happens or it doesn't?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, we were having discussions about that.
Needless to say, Eduardo disagreed strongly.
Yeah, I disagree. I can understand the point of view, at least philosophically.
All right, so Sam is kept. He's trying to make the 50-50 proposition of whether or not he's going to keep that card on top. Yeah. And it doesn't matter because he's got a Misty Ring Forest.
I remember a vigorous discussion on whether Scry was going to make Delver of Secrets broken in Legacy. And then, well, of course it didn't. I think that Scry rule that came from Vancouver was one of the best additions ever to come to Magic.
Oh, I agree. I love it. I love that rule. Here's Inquisition of Kozilek for Sam Pardee. Looks at a hand with Council's Judgment, Path to Exile, and Jace the Mind Sculptor, and 4 lands.
Yeah.
And there's all fetches, that Misty, Scalding Tarn, and 2 Polluted Deltas.
Right. So here, Sam is going to... So if Sam has True Name Nemesis or Bitter Blossom, we're going to take Council's Judgment. If we have an efficient threat, we take Path to Exile. So Owen knows this too. Owen knows that there is potentially a True Name or a Bitter Blossom coming down.
Owen knows everything.
Owen will have figured this out. It might be that Sam...
No turn 2 Bitter Blossom, though, here.
Right. But it might be that Sam doesn't actually have this card. I mean, True Name Nemesis or Bitter Blossom. He's just planning... He's just figuring, I'm down a card, I'm on the play, so I'm down 2, really. I need one of these powerful cards to win, and I don't want to give my opponent a chance to pull ahead. So I have to assume that the card I'm gonna draw one of these cards and go ahead.
Now, talk to me, players who might be tuning in, not familiar with watching a Legacy match. We see players playing multiple fetch lands out, not cracking them at the first opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about, why people are so deliberate with their fetch lands in this format?
Sure. So the thing with fetch lands is exactly this card, Brainstorm. So we alluded to this yesterday. If you're a Legacy player, you know this. Essentially, Brainstorm, draw 3 cards, put 2 on top. The fact is, it varies from going Brainstorm Lock, which is, it's not a good card if you put the 2 cards back on top and just redraw them. It's very similar to drawing a card, essentially. Just you get to shape your hand for a little bit. But with a fetch land, what you can do is draw 3 cards and get rid of 2 cards you don't want. And at that point, it becomes closer to Ancestral Recall.
Which is what we're seeing here from Owen Turtenwald.
Yeah, and Owen's hand was relatively conditional, had a lot of lands, so like being able to sculpt your hand to be more interactive, more proactive, and potentially get a very powerful free drop and get ahead. I think here Owen is relatively favored, but I think in part because Sam is flooding. Apart from that 1 copy of Snapcaster Mage, I haven't seen another spell.
And here we see Sam also sort of just keeping his fetch lands on the table. He has a lot of the same, there's a lot of the same core of these blue-based decks.
Right, and Sam desperately needs a Brainstorm. Owen's Brainstorm was good, but because Owen needs a lot of lands, it's not quite as good as a Ancestral Recall, while for Sam it would be close, because Sam has very little utility for land number 4. So because Sam has land number 4, that means that Brainstorm putting 2 lands back on top is going to effectively be an Ancestral Recall. So Sam is really looking for a Brainstorm here. Owen doesn't have an efficient answer to the card, so yeah. But yeah, you can see the new sculpted hand.
Yeah, now Sam is using Snapcaster Mage to flash back Inquisition of Kozilek. Sees that same path to exile and Jace the Mind Sculptor. There's also a Swords to Plowshares and Council's Judgment.
Yeah. And Owen, well, now that you have Swords and Path, for sure the pick is Council's Judgment.
Yeah.
Usually when you play a discard effect, if you see 2 of the same effect in front of you, you're just going to commit to taking the one that's unique, unless you have to fight through that specific effect.
Problem here is Owen's going to untap and play Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Right. You're going to see Owen most likely here Path/Swords the Snapcaster and play Jace. That said, Sam hasn't done anything, so there's a chance that Owen doesn't slam Jace next turn, fearing a Daze.
Oh, well, he just made it moot. He just drew a Stoneforge Mystic, one of the eponymous cards in this Stoneblade combo.
The funny thing here is that may have been, in a weird way, a subpar draw. Like, while either Jace or Stoneforge would be both powerful, because Sam doesn't have access to counter magic, Owen would have to make a tough call. Do I play my Jace out or not? And there would be a very high chance that Owen decides, I will play it even though my opponent might have Daze, or Owen would have waited. If Owen would have waited, then his Stoneforge is amazing. If Owen would have jammed Jace, Jace would have been more powerful. It's just you don't want to run into Daze, and Owen doesn't know what Sam has in hand.
Of course, the blade in Stoneblade used to refer to the various swords or Jidays that people could play, but now it's just Storms. It's just Stone Skull, right?
Well, it's a skull. We still have the Jiday.
Yeah.
Also know that Umeza was Pointy Stick of Death.
Yeah.
Wow, that card, for the old-timers listening in, that card ruined Kamikawa block for me.
Certainly ruined many games of Limited in that format.
Oh my gosh. I had, again, old-timers, Horobi's Death Whisper and Umeza was Jite were a nice combo. Well, you couldn't equip, but otherwise it was pretty nice.
All right, well, here we see Sam fetching. He now has his 5th land.
Yeah, 5 lands is not really where Sam wants to be. That said, it's interesting that Sam decided to fetch here. I am wondering what's going to come out of this.
How about True Name Nemesis? He's managed to, and then a Diabolic Edict for the Stoneforge Mystic. And he's, managed to keep those Council Judgments out of Owen's hand, preparing for this eventual draw.
Yeah, and Owen can only really play Snapcaster Mage to remove the True Name.
How about back to basics, now locking down all of Sam Pardee's mana, and Owen is going to be able to play a Batterskull next turn.
I really like my one-sided Armageddons. They're really good.
Yeah. I mean, Sam Pardee just doesn't get to untap this mana. There's nothing that will let him deal with this back to basics. And honestly, I feel like that's the card he was looking for.
I might have missed it. Did Sam not attack last turn? I'm just trying to figure out why.
Not sure. Well, he just played that and Diabolic Edict last turn. Then he played that, and no, he didn't attack.
Yeah, because Owen played back to basics and is untapping and doing everything. So that was a bit okay. There's no. I can't think of a strategic reason to not attack.
Here's Jace, and he's going to daze it. That's going to untap a land effectively.
Yeah, and that daze there, being able to add mana essentially is really nice. The one thing that's important, one of Sam's only outs to this situation is the card Pyroblast. There's 2 copies.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Sam is going to need to draw that Pyroblast, target that back to basics, and get there. By the way, something you see a lot of players do in spots like this when they Fate Seal or Scry with Jace is usually try to target their opponents and stop them from drawing relevant cards. But Owen doesn't have full information on what Sam's situation is. So usually in spots like this, it's better to do it on your own card because you know exactly what you're looking for and what you need rather than your opponent's card. because you just have more information. It's just more practical to know what you're because you know what you're looking for and what you're trying to sculpt.
Owen, of course, gets 4 mana to work with every turn here. And by the way, those are the only basic lands in his deck.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you kind of got a glimpse of that because Owen sacrificed the fetch land to get a dual land, so you can kind of get a sense that Owen was out of basics. It was a polluted delta, so you could have felt that there was a second plains, but there's not. That might be relevant down the line. If Owen draws the card Snapcaster Mage, he will need to use one of his Tundras up to Snapcaster the Council's Judgment to get rid of the True Name Nemesis in play.
But has no... Yeah, he'll have to find another Tundra to do that, though. Yeah.
I think between Jace the Mind Sculptor, we're probably going to be okay. Okay, Fotsies. It's a good way to deal with Batterskull. Just wait until they get it and then Fotsies them.
But it's going to get Spell Pierced. Pretty good in a deck with Back to Basics.
Oh, yeah. That's a really great combo. Yeah. I mean, Jace now can't be protected with the +2 from True Name Nemesis, so you might as well use a Brainstorm. And while this Jace may not have generated as much card advantage as others that we have seen, the Jace soaked up, let's see, what is it? It's going to be 3 or 4 attacks?
It's going to be 3 hits from the True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, Jace went to 7. I mean, Jace was basically sculpt a Brainstorm that scryed twice, and on top of that, allowed you to soak 9 damage. It's a pretty good card.
Wasteland on an untapped red source, pretty huge there.
Yeah. I mean, Sam was flooded out, so Sam has access to a Volcanic Island in hand. Worth noting, this is the last Volcanic Island. This is why you see Sam not play it.
He is, yeah.
His only out is that Power Blast, but Sam is being attacked on a ton of fronts here. Oh, I love it. This is great.
There's the Germ token.
Is it a sign of respect or disrespect to use your teammate as a Germ token? What is the statement we're going for here?
All right, and a huge swing in from Owen Turtenwald.
I mean, here Owen is... if we had that advantage power from the Pro Tour, it would start creeping off the screen.
Yeah.
Slowly breaking it and moving on as we go.
It would actually poke someone in the ear over at a dealer's table.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah. It would be very disruptive to coverage, so it doesn't go that far. But yeah, Owen is extremely far ahead.
Yeah, here's Umezawa's Jitte.
Oh, and yeah.
Oh, and now Sam Party has to use a Lightning Bolt.
I mean,
It
yeah.
gets Spell Pierced.
Yeah, that was Sam's last red source, so we're done. There's no way Sam can deal with Back to Basics now, and yeah, we're done.
Wow, Back to Basics from Owen Turtenwald, just putting the hurt on Sam Party. He just had no... It's kind of bizarre that he was both mana flooded and then horribly mana screwed later in the same game, just unable to do anything because of Back to Basics.
Right, but truth is, Sam's draw was extremely subpar. You could see that Sam drew a ton of lands and no action. And in game 1, I mean, this came down to Sam essentially drawing horribly. I mean, I would like to say that there was more play involved, but Sam did not draw very well in this match.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, game 1, we saw him play only a Wasteland and never had any mana to work with. And then at the end of game 2, didn't really have any mana to work with. Back to Basics, backed up by a couple of timely Spell Pierces from Owen, really just closed that game out. So
that is true. The Spell Pierces had value because of Back to Basics. Without Back to Basics, the Spell Pierces would have been dead cards. Probably Owen would have shuffled them or away. But because of that, he got to do some key Spell Pierces.
All right, so we've got more Magic coming up for you, including the first round of today's Dukapalooza. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. everybody. Welcome back to Round 9 coverage here on Day 2 of Grand Prix Richmond. Format's Legacy. The spotlight's on Reed Duke, and the deck is Grixis Delver. It's a Grixis Delver mirror, Eduardo. And,
Grixis Control.
Grixis Control, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's Grixis, no Delver. Let's take a look at what Reed Duke is, what a sample Grixis Control list looks like. This is pretty much the prototype for what these decks, the 4 Baleful Strix being a huge part of it.
Right, and I think the Baleful Strix sums up whether you should want to play this deck or not. When Baleful Strix is a good card, it is exceptional. The fact is, it's a proactive way to advance your game plan, drawing cards, being on the board, while dealing with large threats like Gurmag Angler, Death Shadow that become very popular. When Baleful Strix isn't that good, then the Grixis Control deck struggles a little more.
Here you see Reed talking about this mirror match, this Grixis Control mirror match, and as gritty as it gets. That's the headline for this match from Reed, and you're just looking to get on resources. What does that mean?
Essentially, unlike, say, against Miracles, where you have Swords to Plowshares and you're exiling threats, everything is going to die in this matchup, which means that as the game progresses, these cards like Cole Against Command are going to come into play. You're going to get back Snapcasters, you're going to get back Baleful Strixes, you're going to grind that card advantage bit by bit, trying to get card by card ahead of your opponent.
And the most important thing here for Reed in this match, Liliana, the Last Hope. He said it's the most essential card in this matchup. It's really been the most valuable card in his toolbox every time we've watched him play.
Right, Liliana, the Last Hope, most important card for the Grixis Control mirror. Very hard for either player to deal with the card. So I think whoever has a Liliana, the Last Hope, and untaps is usually going to be extremely far ahead of their opponent.
All right, well, we're going to start on the time walk. If Reed is done before we're done with the time walk, he'll join us in the booth, and he'll give us some insight. But in the meantime, we're going to see how things have gone for him, picking things up at the beginning of Game 1. All right, there you see Adonis Medrano playing Grixis Control at 7-1. He's up against Reed Duke here in Round 9. And Reed is on the draw and starts things off with a Ponder. One of the things worth noting, you notice that Reed Duke has almost all of his cards signed by the artists. Something, he really does just embrace all the different aspects of Magic and really just loves his cards and loves, you'll see him make a plan to go to the GP to get cards signed, as well as planning for what to play and what to do.
Reed loves Magic.
He
That's
just
the best way to
loves
put
Magic
it.
in all of its facets. All right, Adonis Medrano, though, he has the first Baleful Strix on the board.
One important thing to note here, because these are control decks, you can't play a card like Daze, simply because Daze sending you back a land is not acceptable. And that's also why you won't see Wasteland in these Grixis Control decks. You used to see the card when Deathrite Shaman was around, but now it's gone. And the fact is, when Adonis sees Island, he understands that I will not get him to Torak next turn.
All right, now it's his turn to ponder. Also, you see Reed Duke using a Fatal Push on that Baleful Strix. Knows there are not a ton of things in this deck that either he can Fatal Push or cares to hold on to that card for, right?
Right. Fatal Push has very low utility, again, in a matchup like this. Baleful Strix drawing a card, Snapcaster Mage also getting card advantage. Not really anything else you can use it for. And Gurmag Angler, the threat you want to kill, is immune to that, to Fatal Push.
Even though it often only costs 1.
That's fair, but
converted mana cost a little bit different on that card. All right, here we see Reed Duke cracking a Polluted Delta. What's his play going to be here on turn 3?
High chance we're going to see that him to Torak.
Yep.
There's not many efficient counters in a spot like this, so we're really down to trying to get a Force of Will to stop this. So you're at least getting 2 cards.
Here's a Brainstorm, and we've seen this a lot. Players using Brainstorm to protect their most essential cards from him to Torak.
Right, and here you see Adonis putting Jace and Snapcaster Mage on top, clearly trying to protect those 2. If you're going to protect both Jace and Snapcaster, then I like the Snapcaster first.
I think he decided to keep the Snapcaster in hand. He put a different card on top there. Definitely the Jace and one other card.
It's important that the Jace is the top card, or if it's the second card, you can't fetch right away. So you have to decide not to use the fetch land. Oh, wow, 2 spells. I mean, the Lightning Bolt has utility in getting rid of a Jace. The Force of Will just a slightly less utility, but sometimes you can get a Jace.
All right, well, Jace was put on top, as you said. And do you think we'll see Madrano just try to slam a Jace into play here?
It's possible. If Adonis put a land on top, then that was the plan. If the decision was to put a relevant spell, you wouldn't see this fetch land happen. So I think we're going to just see Jace being slammed here. Again, not really many efficient ways. So probably what's going to happen is Adonis is going to slam Jace. I don't believe Reed has Force, but might. So Adonis will probably start by going +2, ideally on his own deck, and to make it immune to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. He's going to do it to Reed's deck. But
yeah.
he does go up to 5. And he let Reed keep a Diabolic Edict. Yeah. Again, not a card that has a tremendous amount of value here.
It's a tiny bit better than Fatal Push, thankfully.
We got a Jace fight.
Yep. But yeah, I think here Reed... Now this is a little different. I would have said Adonis should have done his own library. But now once Reed has Jace, it's a little more difficult since Reed can't do his own library and keep, since Adonis could just plus also and take away the card. So Reed going for the value option that is available, which is looking at Adonis's next draw.
How does one win a Jace fight?
With creatures in play. Well, Snapcaster Mage is a great way to win in these Jace fights. Simply having a Snapcaster on board allows you to put the other Jace down by 2 damage, which forces the opponent to either deal with a Snapcaster or accept that Jace is taking 2, and you're not brainstorming then, you're just +2, which is substantially worse. So you can it's negating the value of Jace. So Snapcaster Mage is really the card we're looking for in order to negate the value of Jace. Baleful Strix is okay, but you're really looking for Snapcaster Bolts here.
Right, and you can do an end of turn, not put your Jace at your Snapcaster at risk.
To be fair, there's not much that punishes Snapcaster at sorcery speed in this matchup. The only card is that one copy that's main deck of Lilia the Last Hope in both lists.
All right, now both players following just the same play pattern here. Now with their Jaces up to 5, they both go into brainstorm mode.
Yeah, and I mean, this is going to be a really high power match. It depends. I don't believe Reed drew a copy of Lightning Bolt, which is going to be the best way to answer Jace here.
He does have a Colligan's Command, which does a
helps
reasonable job here.
Right, and it helps a lot. But Adonis has access to both Colligan's Command and Jace Bolt. Snapcaster Bolt, which would allow it to deal with Jace the Mind Sculptor. It is a heavy mana commitment, though, at 6 between the Snap Bolt and the Colligan's Command. But Jace should allow Adonis to get to that land. Although there's him to Torak, yeah.
Another him for Reed Duke. Did you get a look at what 2 cards he's protecting there with Brainstorm?
Yeah. And I mean, here the protection's even stronger, just because Jace allows you to redraw the cards right away. Putting the card second is okay because you can just Brainstorm to get it back.
Right.
Against the 2 spells.
Wow. That's a lucky die.
Yeah. Baleful Strix and Snapcaster.
So Colligan's Command and Jace. There you go. You see a him to Torak now for Adonis. Where would you have the advantage bar right now?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
This match is still as gritty as it gets.
Yeah, okay.
That said, Adonis, this turn is going to probably go for Snapcaster Bolt plus Colligan's Command, or at least I would favor that play heavily. He may go for him to Torak first. I kind of like going for that play just because getting the potential to get rid of Jace is so powerful, while him to Torak is a little less good in the face of Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Let's see the players. All right, hits Jace, hits a Snapcaster. But Reed gets to look at a lot of fresh cards. He's got the fetch land. He's got the Jace still. Adonis will not be able to get it off the board this turn.
Indeed. Adonis may be going for the safe approach of trying to time the 2 spells at different times.
So Colligan's command at the end of the turn here, maybe return a Snapcaster or a Strix?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Actually here, I kind of like responding. Okay, I'm less convinced by this line.
So he's going to force of will, read Duke's Colligan's command. And then, yeah, you're going to see Adonis play his Colligan's command and get his Snapcaster Mage back.
Right, but Jace staying at 4. So now, I mean, Snapcaster plus Baleful Strix would be a way to kill the Jace, but Reed is aware of this since Reed knows about Adonis's Snapcaster. And yeah, this is why I was maybe not.
Look at
this. I think Adonis may have. I think Adonis could have sequenced this in a way to be ahead, but the way the sequence played out, especially with Reed's, I think Reed drew well, just to be clear. And wow, okay.
True Name Nemesis is the play here for Adonis.
Yeah, a main deck mirror breaker. That said, both players having access to Diabolic Edict makes this a little worse than it would be. It's very good against the Death Shadow decks, which is probably the main reason Adonis is running the card in. But in Grixis Control Mirror, it's a little less relevant.
All right, so we see.
But you do need Diabolic Edict. You need that specific card, and Reed would have shuffled that away with Jace a while ago, so now it's about redrawing it.
So first thing he does is he Jaces for 3 cards.
Yeah, and I see Lightning Bolt and a black card that Reed kept. There's not many mono black cards that Reed would want to keep in the hands.
It was a black card with 2 words too.
Yeah, I think Reed drew the Diabolic Edict. If it was a Diabolic Edict, Reed would keep it in hand and play it. So it probably wasn't. At least that's my best guess.
Now he's going to ponder and shuffle. So it was not a Diabolic Edict.
It may have been a Gurmag Angler. That would also make sense.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
So ponder and then a blind draw here for Reed Duke.
I mean, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So Jace has finished. Liliana minus here is a very interesting line, but
gets 2 Force of Wills, gets a Snapcaster Mage. He's going to bolt Jace.
Okay, gets rid of Jace.
Bolt Jace, yeah.
Sacrifices Liliana the Last Hope in order to get rid of Jace the Mind Sculptor. I mean, there's a heavy cost, but at least Liliana is cashing in for a card. It's not what you would want from what is essentially one of the best cards in the mirror match, but I like that Reed is adapting to the fact that Adonis has different build with that True Name Nemesis, so valuing that Liliana the Last Hope a little less than normal.
And this is where Brainstorm, just as the last top deck card, it's fine, but it's right. You're kind of committed to these 3 cards without a fetch land on the table.
Right. Brainstorm in this spot is actually pretty weak. It's very close to just drawing a card. Okay, you get to choose which one, but I would much rather ponder in this situation than Brainstorm.
Yeah. All right, but Liliana down. True Name Nemesis still on the board. Can Reed find an answer?
I think, yeah, Baleful Strix, start by drawing a card. You get more options with the Jace Brainstorm. It's worth noting, Adonis maybe should have kept the Brainstorm in hand. As you mentioned, you draw 3 cards, but none of them are, it's not going to be that great. So in spots like this, sometimes it's correct to just keep the Brainstorm if you're not looking for something super specific, because there's no card that Adonis could draw that would dramatically change the board state except for the exact second copy of True Name. So I kind of like keeping the Brainstorm in this spot and just waiting a turn and trying to get there later.
Here we see Reed. He gets the Brainstorm, polluted deltas away, whatever's on top. Now still has a Jace activation left this turn. Let's look at another 3 cards. He's going to Brainstorm too.
Yeah, and the reason you see Reed not using the Jace right away is also because
he might want to tick it up.
Right, you might want to tick it up to basically get rid of some of those cards from the Brainstorm. You might also want to tick it down because that draws a card. But you wouldn't take down against a True Name. It's just an option that you would have in some certain circumstances.
Well, here's a Gurmag Angler. And Reed Duke is content to race here, or maybe convince Adonis to keep True Name Nemesis back at the gates.
Right, and Reed is attacking on multiple fronts. By plussing Jace this turn, he realizes that the value of a Brainstorm is a little lesser, and it gives him an option. If Adonis decides to attack with True Name into Jace, then Reed can plus again and attack for 8, which is a 2-turn lethal attack. And if Adonis doesn't attack, then you keep Brainstorming, chip in with that Baleful Strix, and you're happy with the board state. So this means that Reed attacks on multiple fronts, which means that Adonis scoops up.
Yeah, he scoops him up. Things were looking pretty grim for Reed there.
Yeah, I think it all came down to, if you're going to rewatch this match later, I think it came down to that key turn where Adonis had Jace, the option for Snapcaster and Culligan's Command, and I believe Adonis had a better sequence available to him, and Reed maximum punishment as a result. These games are won on very small edges.
All right, well, here comes Baleful Strix, followed by Thoughtseize for Adonis. He's going to look at Reed's hand. He sees Pyroblast, Snapcaster Mage, Bolt.
Right. And you see Lightning Bolt being kept in post-board games just because the Planeswalkers are so powerful. You just need both Snap Bolt as an option. Even though it's not the greatest card, you just need to answer Planeswalkers, make your opponent respect your Lightning Bolt in order to make sure that they plus with Jace, not Brainstorm right away. So it's an option. It's a card you need in the deck.
And now Hymn to Torak is the follow-up play for Adonis. A tremendous turn 3.
Yeah, Pyroblast against Hymn to Torak. Classic battle. Hymn to Torak wins. Spoiler alert. Okay.
And he gets 2 bolts.
Oh,
wait. Looks like there's some argument over which card he meant.
Oh, because he rolled 4, so Reed believed it was the 4th card in the initial sequence, while Adonis was believed it was the next card. We're going to see what happens here, but in truth, it's just good to be extremely clear if you're using this method. But the thing is, if you're doing these random effects, this is why also you'll see some players decide rather than rolling dice to just shuffle the cards, present them to the opponent, and the opponent picks 2, is to avoid situations like this.
Okay, so they've worked over whatever their system was. And again, Adonis had full knowledge of Reed's hand from the Thoughtseize, so there's no information leaked there by redoing which card was discarded. And the end result is Reed gets to keep a Lightning Bolt.
Well, right, and lose a Swamp. It's just better to be extremely clear before. So if you're watching this, just be clear before if you're deciding to do the dice roll method.
All right, well, there is Liliana, the last hope. And Reed is going to go digging for an answer.
Yeah, Reed needs to answer this card swiftly. Losing the Snapcaster and the Bolt means that it's going to be a lot harder to deal with the Liliana here. Discard spells in the mirror are actually really powerful because both players' hands are usually chock full of cards. And normally the problem in mid-range mirrors is that your discard spells become dead draws later in the game, so that's why they're not great. But because you have access to Brainstorm and Jace and can shuffle away discard spells, they remain very powerful because they're very rarely dead draws since you can get rid of them.
All right, so Reed is going to bolt the Liliana at the end of the turn. It's going to Hymn to Torak now against Adonis.
Yeah, and I think here Reed was hoping to draw either Culligan's Command or Snapcaster Mage and just hasn't.
But it also gives him a turn or 2 to be able to do so. Yeah. He has 1 more turn for a Culligan's Command to be relevant, 2 turns for a Lightning Bolt to be relevant.
Yeah, and we see a card enter Adonis' hand that has been popular in some sideboards to fight these control decks, which is the Dreadbore. The cleanest answer you can have to a Liliana, the Last Hope.
So Pyroblast takes out the Baleful Strix, the last card stripped from Reed's hand by the Hem.
Yeah, Pyroblast, you're just trading the card for what you can. I mean, Reed would have loved to just slam a Jace there, even though there would have been a Dreadbore in front, it would have still been. Interestingly enough, it seems like Adonis has boarded in the card Marsh Casualties, if I saw that correctly.
Maybe he's expecting True Name Nemesis?
Well,
we see that he's playing it. Maybe he assumes that Reed is playing it as well.
It's possible. Most Grixis control decks don't run True Name Nemesis, so I think Adonis is giving his own deck list maybe too much credit with the Marsh Casualties there. It might be a hedge. I don't think it's necessary, but here's the Jace.
Slam a Jace.
Yeah, and unfortunately, while this is an amazing draw, Reed is going to get the bad news that Well, there's a Dreadbore coming.
Well, if he can find a lightning bolt right here, right now.
Yeah, and Reed's behind. So Reed's goes, I can't afford to scry. If my opponent has lightning bolt in hand, they have lightning bolt in hand. I'm just going to accept that that's reality. I just need to pull ahead with this Jason to have a shot in the game.
Oh, but he finds a Gurmag Angler.
Right, and I like Reed's play for exactly this reason. He realized I am behind, I need to take a risk, and I just need to find something that can help me pull ahead. It could have been a discard spell to take one of Adonis's key cards, but Gurmag Angler here, a threat that can go after Liliana the Last Hope. And yeah, I think in this matchup you probably want the Diabolic Edict over the Marsh Casualties. I mean, there are a lot of Baleful Strixes and Snapcasters running around, but it's a good answer to Gurmag Angler as well.
Here we see Adonis deciding to minus Liliana to get a Baleful Strix back.
Yeah, a pretty reasonable play.
And then he has the Dreadbore.
Yeah. Yeah, now Baleful Strix defending Liliana against Gurmag Angler. Obviously, the -2 getting rid of a Jason, another Liliana the Last Hope. Maybe not optimal, but yes.
Oh, but here's a Ponder.
We're looking for Cole against Command. And that looks like free cards that Reed would not want. It looked like land, Pyroblast. Pyroblast actually was interesting here. That was the card. That was why Reed was taking his time. Is Pyroblast would allow Reed to kill Liliana the Last Hope, but the 2 lands are going to mean that Reed draws at least 1 dead card, since what was probably a fetch land. So Reed is taking the risk and hoping for the best and gets
there's Diabolic Edict! Gurmag Angler takes out Liliana the Last Hope.
Blind draws, understands, I have to take a risk. I have to get there. I mean, Reed is super far behind here.
Here's Snapcaster Mage on the Dreadbore. And maybe the advantage has swung now back to Adonis. He is the only creature on the board.
I mean, Adonis was always ahead in this game. It's just a question of Reed trying to come back. And, I mean, there's being ahead and there's being ahead. There was like, being ahead like Reed was in Game 1 with Jace at 6 and a bunch of creatures, and there's being ahead when there's still a lot of play. But I think with Adonis having access to 5 mana, Cole against Command, against Reed's, well, top decks, essentially, I think Adonis has a high chance to take this game down. It would take something pretty spectacular from Reed.
He just found himself a Lightning Bolt as well.
Yeah, so now Adonis could take... Liliana Last Hope would be the best card that Reed can draw, and it still would be able to be taken down by both Lightning Bolt and Cole against Command.
Well, here's Thoughtseize. He's like, what's up? And Reed is going to play Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah,
I don't know what he targeted.
We're going to find out probably quite soon, but yeah.
Probably a Brainstorm, yeah.
Yeah. Reed kept the Snapcaster Mage essentially because he wanted more value from a potential Brainstorm or waited for a target or a better spell to flashback. Obviously, once your opponent Thoughtseizes, you have to act.
All right. So Brainstorm to fetch land to the top. Plays a Baleful Strix. He's going to crack the fetch land in response to the Baleful Strix card draw trigger. And now we see Colligan's Command from Adonis, and that gets Polluted Delta out of Reed's hand and gets a Baleful Strix back in his.
Yeah, and this is where the gritty comes from. The Colligan's Command in this type of... Planeswalkers are... Liliana the Last Hope is the best card because Planeswalkers are very difficult to deal with by the Grixis control decks. They're the best class of card. The second best class of card, Colligan's Command with one of these value creatures, allows you to pull so far ahead. Snapcaster Colligan's Command keeps the card advantage trail rolling.
Well, there's Marsh Casualties, and it takes out 2 of Reed's creatures and clears a path for Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, and I think Adonis boarded in Marsh Casualties for this scenario, but I have a feeling it's probably not a card you might want in the matchup. But the thing is, Reed wrote about the matchup, so I can tell you what Reed's thoughts are on this subject. And I may be wrong, but that's okay. I accept that Reed has done way more testing than I have in the mirror matches. Reed does not advocate for boarding in Marsh Casualties, coming in from the actual expert playing the match.
Yeah. Adonis may beg to differ at this point, but that's just results-oriented thinking.
Right. But one interesting thing...
here we go. Look at this. We've got a Colligan's Command getting back Snapcaster Mage. You talked about that chain of value creatures that Reed is looking to set up. And here's a Hymn to Torak.
Yeah, and this was needed. If Reed got to untap with 5 mana and chain Kolaghan's Command, this would have been a disaster. It was like one of the best draws that Reed could have had. And this Him to Turak, although it gets no cards technically, it does actually get a ton of cards just because you can't get Kolaghan's Command. I'll note that Reed normally would board out Diabolic Edict, but because Adonis plays True Name Nemesis, Reed decided to keep at least one in.
Reed is going to slam a Jace the Mind Sculptor here, and he goes for the top of Adonis's deck, leaves it on top, plays a Baleful Strix, and suddenly things have swung towards Reed Duke.
I believe Adonis had was that a Pyroblast on top of Adonis's deck? Okay, so one thing with Jace's plus ability, when your opponent has a fetch land,
you can almost leave a good card up there.
Yeah, the usual line of play is to almost always leave the card because they have a fetch land. And they can't differentiate whether this is correct or not. And as long as once or twice you do put the card on bottom when they have a fetch land, then it's really hard for them to say, well, I should or not. I think Reed left a good card on top and let Adonis shuffle the deck away.
All right, now Adonis gets to slam his Jace into play.
If we get Reed in the booth, I'm definitely asking that question. What was the card on top? I like this. This is high power. Reed is managing to come back. That Kolaghan's Command was a clutch card, and he's managed to rebuild from a really difficult position. He was down on cards. He was behind on board, and he's just come back in this game. I really like how Reed has grinded his way back.
But at 4 life and a bolt in hand here, a Snapcaster Mage represents lethal for Adonis.
Very good point. Reed being at 4, taking out the Jace here. It also means that Reed is going to respect that Adonis doesn't have a Lightning Bolt in the graveyard and probably surmises that there might be one in hand. So it means that fetch lands are probably going to be off for Reed. We're very unlikely to see Reed fetch unless he absolutely has to, just because Lightning Bolt is such a high-risk card. He did keep a Polluted Delta in hand, though, so this could be dangerous. I think Reed is far enough ahead that he shouldn't go to free life. You usually try not to go lower on life when you're ahead. And I think Reed will probably not lose a life here. That's why the Delta's in hand.
Plays another Gurmag Angler. Here's Lightning Bolt.
Uh-oh.
Here's Kolaghan's Command.
No counter magic.
Wow, we're going to get a game 3. Adonis put Reed under some early pressure. Reed mounted a pretty furious comeback there.
Yeah.
But...
wow, that was... Whoa. Okay.
Right, we've just time walked ahead to the opening turn here.
Okay, so we slightly rewinded.
We time ran for a few minutes, and now we're back to time walking.
Opponent respect your Lightning Bolts in order to make sure that they plus with Jace, not Brainstorm right away. So it's an option. It's a card you need in the deck.
And now Him to Turak is the follow-up play for Jonas. A tremendous turn 3. I'm not sure what's going on here. We're getting a little bit of audio playback.
Him to Turak wins, spoiler alert. We've time walked our commentary. This is new technology.
Yeah, we've created a gets 2 bolts. Created a situation where we have some audio argument over which card he meant.
Oh, because he rolled 4, so Reed believed it was
well, we're going to keep playing here and
sequence,
just
while
here's an Inquisition of Kozilek takes the
Adonis
Pyroblast
believed it was
from
the
Adonis.
next card. We're going to see what happens
and
here,
but up with a ponder.
In truth, it's just good to be extremely clear.
All right. I don't know if you guys were hearing that or not. We had to play back in our ear. We're not sure if that was going out or not, but it seems to have been fixed now.
Yeah. Now we get to focus back on Magic. I think one of the most distressing experiences that you learn to get through as a child is hearing your own voice. It can get a bit, even as an adult, it can be a bit jarring.
Well, your voice sounds very different to you than it sounds to everybody else.
Right,
You're used to hearing your voice echoing in your head.
Right. So if you were freaking out at home at like the same commentary and double voices coming out, we were freaking out at hearing ourselves. Oh, wow. I think Reed would give a lot for a copy of Cabal Therapy.
One Cabal Therapy, please. So
there's no copies, but yeah. You have to kind of take Angler here. It's just the forced take.
3 copies of Brainstorm for Adonis to work with, starting on turn 2. Finds a red Elemental Blast.
Adonis's hand was the legacy format.
Gourmet Angler and 3 Brainstorms.
Yeah, and fetch lands as
Yeah.
well. Not normal lands, fetch lands.
And we see a Red Elemental Blast and a Pyroblast now.
Yeah. And you see the play we referred to yesterday, that Reed mentioned, keeping conditional cards on top. So Adonis put first the Power Blast, just in case that Red Elemental Blast gets used up. But with the fetch land, if Adonis decides to use the Red Elemental Blast here, he will lose the second one.
Well, here is Liliana, the last hope. We've seen Reed slam this into play on turn 3 before. Yeah. How will Adonis deal with this? Those Red Elemental Blasts and Pyroblasts do nothing.
Right,
about
and
this.
It's the problem with that card. I mean, you need it because it's good enough in a matchup like this, but you have to because getting a Snapcaster or killing a Jace is so powerful that you need the card. But there's definitely moments where you're facing him to Turak and Liliana with that card, and yeah. Oh, wow.
There is an Engineered Explosives for Adonis Medrano.
Yeah, he was looking for that or Dreadboard. Dreadboard would be the absolute cleanest answer, but an Explosives for free here. That said, Explosives is extremely high risk. And the reason for that is that both players have access to the card Kolaghan's Command. So playing Engineered Explosives and letting your opponent untap is an extremely high risk play, and that's why you didn't see Adonis try to slam an Explosives for free. If your opponent gets the Kolaghan's Command that plus anything, you're in real trouble because you tapped out for a card that did nothing and lose even a card in the process on top. So it's really... Because even like extra lands can be really useful.
Here's Brainstorm number 2 for Adonis. And he's going to lead things off with a Thoughtseize after that. Sees double Snapcaster Mage and Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, so that would have been a disaster had Adonis played that Explosives. I found it interesting Adonis put the Liliana second from the top here. Probably trying to protect it from a discard spell.
I can tell you, we've been joined in the booth by one Reed Duke.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Reed. Talk us through what's going on for you here.
Well, this was an interesting game. We both had really strong hands. My hand had 2 spot discard, which was sort of thwarted by the fact that Adonis had so much redundancy and so much card filtering. Means I couldn't really punch a hole in his defenses because he was going to be able to see so many cards after the discard.
Triple Brainstorm.
Yeah, exactly. But I was able to find exactly what I wanted off of my Ponder, which was a turn 3 Liliana, the Last Hope. One of the hardest cards to deal with in the Grixis Mirror, and actually credit to Adonis, he came prepared with answers to this card when, a couple weeks ago at the Pro Tour, this was sort of lights out if I could get to this situation in the Grixis Mirror. So I knew Adonis wasn't completely dead to it, particularly because he had answers and so many brainstorms, but this is, a solid way to gain an advantage in the early game, and it's going to put the pressure on him to make something happen.
Right. I just wanted to ask you a question about Game 2. When you Fate Sealed your opponent, or Adonis rather, and you saw the card on top and put it back when he had a fetch land, was it? I think I saw Pyroblast. Was it actually that, or?
It was a Scalding Tarn, but
sorry.
That was a situation where you bring up a great point that I could actually leave a dangerous card on top and just gamble that he's going to crack his fetch land. I think I probably would have left anything on top there because I think from his perspective he just has to give himself a fresh draw to have the best chance of winning.
Okay, yeah. It was something that if you're just coming into Legacy might not be as obvious, and especially coming into Modern, Jace exists there, fetch lands exist there. It's also a play you can take home for that.
All right, well, here's Snapcaster Mage for you.
So can you walk through your position here? You have Liliana at 6. You don't know, I believe, Adonis's hand at this point because of all the card filtering. So what's the plan?
Yeah, I remember I had my scrap sheet of paper where I was writing down his hand, and the last card that I really believed that he still had was Brainstorm. But still, I thought I could Snapcaster Thoughtseize because I had another pretty potent threat waiting the last card in my hand, which we'll see in a moment. And I figured he can stack 1 answer card as the top of his library, but not 2. So if I can take something from his hand and leave him working with just the top of his library, that's good enough.
Yeah, and here you take the Brainstorm. What was the logic over him? If you're mentioning that the card in your hand was... was it Gurmag Angler?
It's going to be a Gurmag Angler for sure. I've watched enough of Reed. Bloodstained Mire into Gurmag Angler is the last play of the last card.
This is where we need the hand cam. Right in here.
So now Engineered Explosives for 3 deals with the Liliana. But you still feel pretty good here with 7 points of power in play?
As good as can be. I mean, his life total's dropping. He did know the top card of his library, and he stacked a good one there, True Name Nemesis. So game's up in the air.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier that like Adonis didn't run out explosives for free just because of explosives and just wanted to be careful.
I like this attack from Reed here. Just sends them both in. And you get 2 free points of damage there. You expect that he's just going to absorb.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go to 3, and play a long game where he's vulnerable to Lightning Bolt off the top.
Yeah, because one thing about this post-board match, as you draw another Gurmag Angler, is it feels like there's almost no counter magic outside of Pyroblast.
It's pretty common, I think, for these Grixis players to sideboard out Force of Will. And yeah, that leaves pretty much just the Elemental Blasts.
Wow, so second Gurmag Angler closes the game out, and you go to 8-1 here going into the next round. Keeping an eye on your competitors in the Player of the Year race at all there, Reed?
I saw that they were 6-2 overnight, which actually puts them in an interesting position with Seth in particular, because he needs a top 8 to improve. So does he play Standard? Does he play Legacy? All right, got to go.
All right, Reed. We'll see more of you next round. Good luck the rest of the way.
Yeah, Reed actually brought an interesting point regarding Seth and Luis. It's likely that Luis Salvato will be playing Legacy still, since his threshold for a finish is much lower. Seth needs a top 8. So it's quite possible that we're going to see Seth Manfield tomorrow. I guess at some point we're going to check that out, because Seth would need to win out today probably to make top 8.
Right. And because of the buys those players have, they can also play a couple rounds this morning, see how things look, and then assess again before they would have to start playing in the Standard GP.
Right. There's a really weird thing with these double GPs where you can basically play 2 rounds normally, sometimes free, being signed up to the other event. And if your result is good enough, you stay, and if it's not, you play the second. Okay, we're done with that discussion. Holy, okay.
So we've got Miracles versus Enchantress. This is live. It's the last match in the room. In the whole room, it is the last match going on. Both these players are 7-1. Alex Hatfield playing Enchantress. You see Miri's got. You see 2 copies of Enchantress's Presence. You see Carpet of Flowers.
Oh, wow. Okay, Disenchant, the card protecting you in solitary confinement that would prevent all damage. Those angels would be lethal. And that's it.
Oh, okay.
But Disenchant was Disenchant the Enchantress. That's how you get there. Okay, that was a really complicated board. Thankfully, Alex died horribly, so we don't have to analyze it too much.
Right, 12 points of Flying Angels there from from an Entreat.
Right.
And but double choke, all sorts of. Wow, that deck looks super cool. Maybe we'll get another chance to see that here on Good Morning Magic. I know Alex and his brother were both playing Enchantress in this tournament. I think his brother fell by the wayside on day 1, but Alex still alive here at 7-2 going into round 10.
Right, and there, there was a lot in that game, and we couldn't unpack it. But the key there was solitary confinement in that deck. You can draw a lot of cards per turn, and solitary confinement stops you from drawing cards for the turn, and you have to discard a card to keep it. But while it's in play, you can't take damage, and I believe you have Shroud, if I'm not mistaken.
You do.
So, while that card's in play, you can't lose. Disenchant kills it, though. Win. You done.
12 points of power in the air, 11 points was Alex's life total, and that was it. Okay, and that wraps up round 9 here at Grand Prix Richmond. We've got we're going to follow Reed Duke live next round with Marshall in the booth, and we're going to hear Reed walk through his thought process as he sort of narrates the match from the feature match area. If you didn't get a chance to see any of those matches yesterday, it's a really special experience. We'll get a good look at his hand every time, and you get to play along with Reed and see what you would do.
You get to hear the table. You get to it's like you were standing behind him.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Don't go anywhere. A couple brief messages, and then we'll be back with round 10 of Grand Prix Richmond.
Duca Paluzza.